we started to think about, well, Imperius is going to come for the Black Soul Stone. That's the mechanic that we're going for with the plot. But what if he also takes some time to really exact vengeance on Tyrael, who he considers to be a traitor?
In light of the recent slew of videos on the channel exploring dark lore in Diablo, specifically developers' designs that never made it to the final release, today we will explore perhaps the most egregious of storylines abandoned, which is that of Imperius, the Archangel of Valor, never turning into the villain which was teased pre-Diablo 3's launch. Originally, we the community were gifted a phenomenal introduction to the Angels of Diablos universe, titled Wrath. There we see the angels working together to battle the forces of hell, and eventually their unity was tested, as Imperius, in his lust for victory, sought to face Diablo alone. Goaded by the Lord of Terror to give in to his rage, Imperius would sacrifice his valor, and his spiral into the aspect of wrath would begin.
This is not justice, brother. Nor does this decision lie with you alone. If you slay him, he will simply return in time. But if we imprison him... Against his kind, there could only be blood for blood!
So much for your unity. The trap at last is sprung.
By the events of Diablo 3, the Council is further degraded, as Malthael had gone mad due to the Worldstone's disappearance. Imperius, now leading the Council, short of wisdom and justice, he meets the player in a wild state of rage, lashing out.
Your kind does not belong here. If I see you again, you will die.
After the Nephilim defeat Diablo, Imperius bitterly was relegated to watching from the sidelines, as by the end of Reaper of Souls, the Nephilim would literally go supernova.
I saw the Nephilim in a new light. She is a hero who can defeat the champions of heaven and hell, and a barbarian who protects the innocent. But within her beats a mortal heart that will one day be tempted to corruption. On that day, will she have the strength to resist? Or will she be our doom?
Which doesn't seem congruent with the entire setup pre-Diablo 3. Clearly, the developers went to pains to show Imperius' conflict within his role as Valor, his outright tension with Tyrael, and burning fury at the humans who have essentially robbed him of his promised glory and prestige. But it wasn't always so. In the behind the scenes of Reaper of Souls, we saw Imperius originally was meant to sink into his savagery and embrace his role of wrath, taking out his rage on Tyrael directly and becoming more demonic in the process. So here's the full unseen storyline of Imperius becoming Wrath. And as a side note, apologies for the subtitles, it's the only behind the scenes I could find, but the story of Imperius we deserve but never got is definitely well worth a watch.
That's where the flavor comes out, you know? As we were conceptualizing the Diablo 3 expansion set, we had a number of lingering plot threads that we wanted to tie up. We wanted to continue the chronicle of the Nephilim hero that you played in the core game, and we wanted to kind of just see what was happening with the rest of the family.
We had to establish our villain for the piece in a way that felt natural and didn't take away the accomplishment of what you had just done, which was to kill Diablo.
Our initial thinking was that Imperius would be our bad guy.
The original plot of the cinematic was basically Tyrael and some crusaders have shown up at this tomb of Rakkus,
tomb of Rakis itself is a Nephilim structure underground. It's the resting place of Rakis, the champion of the Zakarum, which has now been retooled, so to speak, as a hiding spot for the Soulstone, just because of its remote location. And the only hope to keep the Soulstone from getting into the wrong hands really is to hide him.
Tyrael has decided that it's just too dangerous to keep it in heaven. They think everything's going to be fine, and then Bamf, Imperius shows up and changes the whole equation. Imperius basically called Tyrael out for what he considered his foolishness.
You sacrificed everything to be one of them. Was it worth it?
And then he proceeded to slay every single guard in the room and beat the heck out of Tyrael for a bit. And what finally happened was that just before he was about to claim the Soulstone, Tyrael throws out a line, "I do not fear death." And Imperius says something to the effect of, "Well, we'll see." And so this was our opportunity for the introduction of Malthael, the Angel of Death. So Malthael shows up, takes all the souls of the guards in the room, and then together he and Imperius leave Tyrael bleeding on the floor and take the Soulstone. We started out was sort of a brother against brother idea. You know, you had Tyrael and Imperius, two awesome characters that had all this back history. There's a painting that initially ignited some people's imagination that was this painting of Imperius with bloodied gauntlets. And it's just a very arresting idea. We started to think about, well, you know, Imperius is going to come for the Black Soulstone. That's the mechanic that we're going for with the plot. But what if he also takes some time to really exact vengeance on Tyrael, who he considers to be a traitor? You know, this is the angel that ripped off his wings and joined the mortals. And so it just seemed natural that Imperius would take a moment to really relish in Tyrael's demise.
And we did want to almost kill Tyrael or make him to the point where he was almost dead. And most of the cinematics or the storyboards at that point contained an enormous amount of blood that was going to be included in the cinematic. He was going to be bleeding, possibly from his nose or even his mouth or other parts of scrapes or cuts on his skin. We need to make that not only look as realistic as possible, but also blend into the performance that we were trying to get from the character, an emotional performance that was going to be very, very hard to maintain.
From a technical standpoint, we looked at doing the blood in a couple different ways. We could involve the effects team and do it as a fluid sim splashing onto the metal, but there's a lot of computation to this. There's a lot of iteration time that's lost.
But in that instance, I think it created the right level of emotionality that we were seeking.
We wanted Imperius to look a little different in this expansion than we wanted in the first game. He definitely has undergone some damage. The Heaven's Gate absolutely collapsed on him.
So his armor, we want to progress in the sense that it had all this wear and tear, all this dent. That was one thing we were playing off of, and we were playing off of how his personality was reflected in his armor.
And we wanted that to echo the thematic truth, that Valor had turned to wrath, and that there was more math going on inside that suit of armor than just, the power of evil itself, is that his whole being was really turning and transforming.
And Imperius by nature is a very reflective character with giant bright wings. He's an angel, and when we looked at it from a lighting standpoint, we're like, okay, how do we get a very bright character to sit into this world now that is supposed to be full of shadow and darkness?
There was an idea that we had that we were very fond of, that when Imperius reaches out to claim the Soulstone, when he touches it, you would see the hint of a transformation. The idea is that it would be very dark, he would be largely a silhouette, and as he touched it, that silhouette, all the points on his helmet would just elongate slightly.
So some spiky things coming out from the shoulders, and then the face or the helmet started to deform.
Sort of much more demonic looking. His eyes would slant inward. He'd get much more of a sinister look on his face. We didn't have a lot of time to accomplish it, but we definitely wanted to suggest that it was going to start happening.
One of the challenges that we had to deal with was why doesn't Imperius just kill Tyrael? You know, that was a question that just kind of kept popping up.
He can't kill Tyrael. We need Tyrael in the story. Tyrael's a very important character in the universe.
It was something that we just danced with for a long time.
Brother, why?
Imperius was going to have this second in command who was helping him out, and that was this mysterious angel of death, Malthael. But having two villains in a 4-minute cinematic really was dividing our focus, and it sort of was like Imperius and Malthael were competing with each other for who could be the coolest.
That was the other thing. We were introducing this great villain, this great new character, Malthael, the Angel of Death. So sinister looking, really awesome. He has a great entrance, and then he basically has nothing to do after that. He stands there for half the cinematic and just nods his head or something, you know? And that kind of stuck in our craw, too. It was just like, gosh, he's such a good character. I wish there was a payoff for him in this cinematic.
Imperius was sort of stealing his thunder. And we really talked about the motivations between the two characters, and we felt that Imperius's motivations were very similar to Malthael's.
And that's where we decided maybe Imperius really isn't required. Maybe he was less of a character than we thought.
Maybe we pull Imperius and we make it Malthael, the Angel of Death, come to claim the Black Soul Stone. All of a sudden, you know, everything just kind of fell into the proper place because Malthael doesn't have anything personally against Tyrael. Tyrael is descended purely from angels. He has no demon in him like all the residents of Sanctuary. So Malthael's goal is to wipe out humanity, but it is not to wipe out Tyrael. Tyrael is like a bug to him, basically. It just made much more sense that Malthael would maybe have a moment with Tyrael, since they know each other from back in the day. But ultimately, he just discards him like a rag and goes on to claim the Soul Stone. Once this idea of Malthael becoming the main villain came into play, those problems were solved. And you just had to look at the value of that and say, we should make this change. And we got very excited about the idea of, you know, an expansion with the Angel of Death as our big bad.